everybody, if you don't have your tofu out of the freezer, go ahead and pull it out and let it sit on the counter so it can thaw just a little bit.
It really is yellow.
Yeah, mine turned yellow too.
Yeah.
I know,
So
it
Mary,
doesn't look that tasty, does it?
no. Mary, is there a reason why you had us freeze it?
Yes,
Are you going to
I'll
tell?
explain that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, you guys, if you make a comment, why don't you say your name so I can make sure I know who it is? Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. I know most everybody's voices, but not perfect. Okay. Well, good. Well, I've got us a little bit after 5, so I'm going to go ahead, and I see Katie's here, so I want to welcome her. Good to have you. Is Sam going to be here, Dale?
He's on his way back from work, so hopefully.
Okay, because he's got to keep an eye out for anything unusual. Oh, good. Let me see if anybody else has showed up. I'm sure other people will show up as they come along. There's Rosemary. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started just because I want to respect everybody's time. And as other people come in, I know Claire, that's Jean's daughter, she's going to be here just a little bit late because she had to work late. So I know she'll be coming, and I'm sure other people will be joining in too. And today, Maggie's filming for us again, so thank you, Maggie. I'm going to turn the camera on her at the end so you can all see she's such a wonderful person. And she's so fun to have along on these things. But let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start right off with pickling the onion. And the reason is that that's got to have time to marinate. And then I'll back up and do our pre-cooking steps. And then we're going to get into talking about this whole thing with the freezing of the tofu. But first, we got to get those onions pickled. And I'm glad my daughter's Emery is on the call, because she's the one who suggested this as something that would be kind of a little bit different that we could do with our tacos, because tacos, we all know how to make them, but it's kind of fun to learn something new that we can put on them. So we're going to go ahead and get that started. And the way we start that is with making a little brine. Brines are simple. They're just usually a salt, a vinegar, and then sometimes water. And this time we're actually going to put a little bit of honey in as well, which is kind of a little bit of sweetness to offset the onions just a little bit. And it's not much. And I've got us down for using honey because I try to stay away from processed sugars. But if you didn't have honey, it's fine for you to just use a teaspoon of sugar on this too. Or even brown sugar could work as well. And then I'm going to not lick this all this nice honey off of my finger, though. It's just so tempting. But then into the, with the honey, we're going to put 1/3 cup of apple cider vinegar. And I actually forgot to shake it. You know, a lot of the apple cider vinegars have the mother. It's the bacterium down in the bottom, which are probiotics, which are really good for us. And so make sure that you shake yours up. If you've got those, that mother, it's kind of a funny looking thing. You think it looks like kind of some kind of diseased something in the bottom of your vinegar, but it actually isn't. It's actually some probiotics that are really good for us. So go ahead and shake that up and get some of that into your dish. And then a little bit of salt. I think it says 1/2 teaspoon. Go ahead and put that in. And then you can whisk that up. You can use a whisk if you need to, or a fork. Just get that all mixed up. And then we're going to go ahead and slice up the onion. And I think everybody is pretty set. We talked about onion cutting, but I am going to move myself up, and Maggie's going to focus in on it in case that helps. And you only need about 1/2 of an onion. And so I'm going to go ahead and cut up just half of this. And then if you are worried about, oh, I might waste the rest of that onion, you can just throw it in when we cook the pepper. You can just throw a little extra onion. That's not going to hurt a thing. So remember what I did is I went too fast. Cut off the ends. Then I got a flat side to set the onion on. Then I can slice down this way. We always want to get things down to a flat side if we can, because that makes it more stable, a little less dangerous. And then I go ahead and peel off that outer layer. A lot easier to peel once you've got it cut in half, rather than trying to peel it when the onion is whole. And then I go ahead and I put the knife under my hand. That keeps my hand safe. And then I go ahead and very carefully, I'm going kind of slowly because we want these slices to be pretty thin. You can maybe see that I'm just 1/8 of an inch, no more than 1/4 of an inch And the reason being that if we just don't want these things to be in these big hunks because that'd be just a little too much onion at one time. So we're trying to get those as thin as we can. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut them another couple of times too because I don't want huge slices in there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and back up. And then we'll go ahead and put those slices into our brine here. And I have you using a fork to kind of break up the slices because we want to get them each exposed to the brine as much as possible. Now, if you're a person like me who's not real fond of raw onions, in fact, I never eat raw onions. They make me, I don't like the flavor and they make my stomach upset. Okay, so if you're a person like me, you might be thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this on top of my tacos. But here's the interesting thing is that when we put an ingredient or a food into an acid, it kind of cooks it. And I always give the comparison to ceviche, which is a fish that they cook in lime sauce. They actually cook it in the lime sauce and the lime juice. And this is the similar sort of thing going on here. We've got it in the vinegar, the acid that will kind of cook this onion and make it so that it's not nearly as harsh or bitter and it won't hurt your stomach as much. Of course, if you're concerned, go slow on it and make sure that it's okay before you go eat a whole bunch of them. But that's why I wanted to get this started really early because it needs at least an hour, maybe two. You could even, if you want to in the future, you can always do this in advance, like, say at 3 o'clock or even at noon, and then just let it sit all day and that'll cook it even more. So we're going to go ahead and just set that aside right now. And let's see, I've got it over here with all my toppings and my mise en place thing. And let's see, Henry or Maggie, do you mind unmuting? And let's just see, does anybody have any questions about the pickling? And I meant to ask people that, this was an optional step because sometimes I feel like I get too involved with these cooking demonstrations. And so if that was a little bit of overwhelming, you didn't have to do that part. But for those who did it, or if you were just watching, does anybody have any questions? Okay, somebody does. Go ahead and unmute yourself, or I think you are unmuted. You can go ahead and just talk. I think you still have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
How about that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I have to confess that there happened to be a jar of pickled shallots in my refrigerator that one of our children made, one of your children or my children made, and I thought, well, I'll see how it goes next time. So anyway, but the shallots, and I just want to know, they've been in this refrigerator in the jar for like 10 days, and they're just delicious. So it does seem to last quite a while, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's the other good thing about the vinegar. It's a preservative. Vinegar and salt are both preservatives. So as long as the shallots are submerged in there, they should be fine. And that's a great use of it. It'll be interesting to hear what you think of that, Jean, once you put it on the tacos. So it would be a good use of it.
Full disclosure.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going because I want to back up now and just talk about our pre-cooking steps. Because I keep emphasizing this in every class because we're all about how can we make this healthy meal making easy and fun. And one of the big things is to do your pre-cooking steps. And the ones that happen before you even come in the kitchen are knowing what you're going to make, having the right ingredients, doing your shopping, having the recipe handy, making sure that your pantries are stocked, that you have the right equipment. All those pieces, if they're in place, cooking becomes a lot easier. And then the second part of getting ready to cook is doing a recipe review. And we've done this several on all the other recipe cook-togethers that we've done. But in this one, I've already explained to you that there's 6 main steps, and that sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. But some of them are really simple steps, but we just broke it down into that. So the first part is taking care of that tofu, and we're going to talk about that next. The second part is those pickled onions. Got that done. Then we're going to make a spicy, saucy mixture right here. Then we're going to add the tofu to that. Then we're going to flash fry some onions and green peppers here. And then we've got the toppings, whatever ones you want. Mine are back here. And then over on the microwave here are my tacos. So what that does is it reviews the recipe for you no, actually tortillas, I should have said, they're not tacos. So that reviews the recipe for you, and it also shows you how I set up my mise en place, which is the other part of once you come to the kitchen and you're ready to start cooking, then you've got to get yourself set up here. That's reviewing your recipe, doing your mise en place. One of the things that I wanted you to really think about, because we've done this before, so I'm not going to go into much more detail on that, but one of the things I wanted you to just think about this time when we talk about reviewing the recipe is just timing. Because I think one of the hardest things about cooking is trying to get it all to come out at the same time, and that's really tricky. That's where this recipe review really comes in, though, because you can see and get this game plan in your head and go, I mean, obviously with this recipe, that's why I wrote it that way. You knew that the night before and the morning of you had something to do. Right before the class, you needed to get your tofu out. And then you knew that the pickled onions had to be done a little bit in advance. And then we've got these other steps that can go on at the same time. And the tortillas, it tells you, that's at the very last minute. So I think that's what that recipe review can do, is help you get a sense for how all these parts and pieces can come together at the end. And always remember, it's just not the end of the world if something gets a little bit cold and has to wait a bit. So I don't want you to get nervous over that. So then the 3 Legos, we talked about Legos and how I try to demystify cooking by sharing that really recipes are just Legos that we put together in different combinations. So flash frying the peppers and onions, we've done that before. So that's not going to be new, but the 3 we're learning are pickling onions, and you saw how easy that is, but you can now use that for all sorts of things. Some of the things I used it for, just quickly I'll tell you, is I tried it in tuna salad. It was really good. Or if you make a tofu egg salad, you could use it in that. I put it on my breakfast greens. I used it in a Yucatan shrimp dish. So lots of uses for those. And so Jean, there you go with your pickled shallots, or I think that's what they were, pickled shallots. Lots of different uses that you can start putting those into. Then the tofu prepping. We're going to learn about that. Remember, you can use that in all sorts of other tofu dishes now once you learn how to do it. And then chilies, we're going to play with chilies because they're kind of fun. I've only recently, maybe in the last 5 years or so, gotten into chilies myself, and there's a whole new area that you could explore and have fun with your cooking. So, okay, so with that preparation, we got all our preparations, we're ready to go. Let's go ahead and start talking about the tofu. That's what everybody was interested in, and it is an interesting thing because we'd all like to maybe start eating a little less meat, and tofu is a good option. So let's talk about what we can do with it. And the big problem with tofu, of course, is blandness. And I'm sure if you've all tasted tofu, you know that it can be bland. And if you put that big blob of bland into a dish, then it can really zap the energy out of the dish. And there are some dishes where it's good, like in a miso soup, or when I lived in Japan, they would make tofu with soy sauce, toasted sesame oil, and scallions. And it was great that way. But if you think about putting it in any other kind of dish, it's kind of a big bland blob. So what do you do with that? There's 2 main things that we want to do. The problem with tofu is its water content. Cooks Illustrated, this is hard to believe, but they say that tofu is 86% water. And that's really hard to believe. That should be a good diet food is what I'm thinking, but I'm not sure it is. But anyway, if that's the case, you can see water doesn't have much flavor. So if we're putting a big blob of water into our dish, that's why it's not very flavorful. So big thing we need to do is get rid of the water. And 2 ways to do that are 1, to drain it, and then 2, to freeze it. They both work together to get rid of the water in the tofu. And once we do that, what's nice is that then the tofu can absorb flavors better. And it can also get a chewier texture so that, it doesn't just taste so bland. It's got some texture to it. It isn't just something that's kind of slipping down your throat. The other thing is you can fry it better once it's frozen. We're not going to do that today, but just so you know, you can fry it and get a nice crispy exterior once it's got a lot of that water content removed from it. So Cooks Illustrated says that, I was going to just tell you about the science, because Cindy, you asked about how does that work. What Cooks Illustrated says is that as the tofu freezes, the ice crystals expand, pushing apart the protein network. And then when thawed, the water drains away, leaving the tofu so that it's absorbent and it fries better and all of that. And I'm sorry I got distracted because, of course, my cat, you all know about my cat who always has to be involved in everything. He's out there crying somewhere. Fortunately, Maggie's going to find him wherever he is. So anyway, so I think there's two things going upon. The ice crystals break apart the protein, and then that allows, once it breaks that apart, it allows the tofu, we can get out more water. So Cooks Illustrated, what they do is they only just slice the tofu into slabs and freeze it like that. But I found that it's a lot better if you, and now my cat is taking Maggie's seat. So he's just part of the crew here. Okay, we'll just keep going. Maggie, thank you for taking care of that. But what I feel like is it's a lot better to go ahead and drain it first. Why not get rid of as much water as you can before you freeze it? And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to squeeze out even more water now once it's frozen. And so that's why I had you do those two-step process. One is stick it in the refrigerator and just on its side and let it drain. And I was surprised. I got a good quarter to half an inch of water out of it just doing that. And now, if you didn't have time for that, there are different ways to drain tofu. They take a little bit longer, but I will put those in a handout and send them to you with the email with the recording, so you can see those. But anyway, it's a lot easier if you just remember the night before, stick it in a refrigerator on its side, it just drains on its own. And then we went ahead and we crumbled the tofu, and I'll hold that up just in case, so for people who didn't do the tofu, then you can see what it looks like. And I gotta tell you, it was a lot yellower when I first got it out of the freezer. I think the yellowing is kind of going away now. I don't know if anybody else noticed that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, and I just got my spatula here, and I'm going to kind of scoop it all into a pile here. And mine is still just a little bit frozen. If I had thought about it, I might have gotten it out a little bit sooner. And so you might think about that next time. But what I'm going to do now is, can you see? Yeah, you can see. Okay. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm just squeezing it over the sink and getting out a little bit more water and then crumbling it into my colander. I've got my colander here. Let me pull it over so you can see it a little bit better. So that's what I'm doing. And if it was, oh, there you can see now a lot of water's coming out of the part that's gotten thawed just a little bit. And your hands might get a little bit colder in this. But we'll go ahead and do that to yours. Is everybody having, why don't you unmute people and let me hear, are people getting this step okay? Did they get it drained? Did everybody drain their tofu first? Thumbs up.
A smaller thing. I didn't put it on a tray like you're supposed to.
Our tofu popsicle is still pretty firm.
Well, you know what? If your tofu isn't yet thawed, go ahead and just leave it a little longer. It's going to be a minute before we put it in with the sauce. And you'll just do this step at that point, because it does thaw pretty quickly. Okay? All right?
I have a question about the onions.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Better. My onions are not all the way submerged in vinegar. Do I add more vinegar or?
Oh, well now, just 1 second. What we need to do is you only needed, I think it was a half a cup.
That's
Did
why
you
I'm
have more onion than that?
Where's those 2 onions I bought? I don't know.
Okay, the 2 onions, 2 yellow onions, are going to be we're going to be frying those with the peppers.
I'm gonna fry the peppers and the onions, and it's
Yeah, so those 2 are for that.
And we need to get the spices together.
And it's just the single red onion that you're just going to slice up half of it. And I believe the recipe says just a half a cup. And so that should fit into your, it should be submerged down into your vinegar, okay. But you know, you can add a little more vinegar. Just go ahead and add enough vinegar, you know, because you can add up to half a cup of vinegar or even just a little bit more. So add a little bit more. Because actually, as I look at mine, they're not quite submerged either. But I'm kind of mixing them up and getting them down into the vinegar.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All righty. So, okay. So is everybody got their tofu kind of started, or you'll go back to it in a minute? So, okay. So, and then just one quick thing is that apparently you can just, if you've got your tofu all frozen like that, you can actually store it like that in the freezer, put it in a Ziploc bag and store it there. Because I always find that a lot of times I use a half a block of tofu and then I forget to use the rest and it goes sour. And so what would be a lot better is right after you use the half a block, freeze the rest. And then, you know, you've got it there for whenever you're ready. And it does store fine in the freezer. Okay, so now we'll go ahead on and season this tofu. So for those who haven't, if your tofu is still too frozen, just remember you're going to want to do this step once you get it squeezed out and it's here. But what I'm doing here is I'm simply putting on about a tablespoon of soy sauce, and I'm using full strength soy sauce, not the light one. And then I'm just taking my hands and kind of working that through. And the reason for that is, again, we're working with the blandness of tofu. And it's really nice to have a little more seasoning in that tofu. And salt sometimes doesn't do it for tofu. The soy sauce is just really good. And you might be thinking, well, that might be kind of weird with Mexican food, but you know, you don't even taste it. But what it does is add a lot more flavor to that tofu. And even if you're using the burger, I know Jean is, and whoever, and if anybody else is, you'll do this same thing when you're browning the hamburger. And in fact, Jean, this would be a good time for you to go ahead and start your hamburger because we're going to go ahead and make the spice mixture now. And whoops, let me get that off of there and see if I can get my burner to work okay. Okay. So Jean is just using hamburger. So what she's going to do is go ahead and brown her hamburger or whatever kind of burger you're using. And if anybody else is doing that, brown that now. Then we'll push that to the side and do the spices in the middle. But for the rest of us who are using tofu, we're going to go ahead and just do the spices here, and then we'll add the tofu. Okay. So now what I've done is I've turned my burner on because I'm using my real heavy bottomed pan and they take a while to heat up. So I'm going ahead and heating that up, but only on medium low heat because all we're going to be cooking in here is the garlic and the spices to begin with, and they can get burned pretty easily. So no more than medium low or low on your pan. Okay. And if your pan isn't heavy bottomed, I wouldn't go above low on the heat. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do the, I'm going to get rid of that board. Okay. Going to do the garlic, and you're going to see that the recipe calls for a whole quarter cup of garlic. And you might be thinking, that's a lot of garlic. And you're right, it is. Because remember, we're talking about the blandness of tofu. So again, we've got to do, this is our next step. We've drained it, we've frozen it, we're seasoning it with soy sauce. Now we're going to put a lot of spice with it to try to make it, you know, a little something besides bland and boring. So we're going to go ahead and put in a quarter cup of minced garlic, or chopped garlic is just fine. Should I move this up a little, Maggie, and so you can see a little better? And my garlic is a little bit funny looking. You can go ahead and start chopping yours. Mine might look a little bit unusual rather than the usual garlic cloves that you get at the store. And the reason for that is because this is garlic that's from my garden. And I'm going to actually show you back here. You can keep mincing your garlic, but just a little something fun to notice. This is what garlic looks like when it grows in the field. This is from my garden. And it gets these big green stalks, and these curly things are called garlic scapes. A lot of people use those. They're really fun. And then at the bottom is where the garlic head forms down there, down in the ground. And so what you get in the store when you buy garlic is you just get this part. What you don't know is it's got all of this that are also edible as well. So you can use all that. So just a little side note of what these look like. But that's why my garlic looks just a little bit different, because my garlic cloves are not quite as mature as the ones that you're probably getting in the store. they're still on the immature kind of baby side. So that's why they look like this. But we'll go ahead and mince that up, and then we're going to put it into the pan and just saute it. But here's the thing about both garlic and spices, like I mentioned. Oh, you want to see it again? Okay, sure. Okay. 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 Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's what it looks like there.
Can you see it? Oh, wait, let me put it in front of here. Is that easier to see?
Yeah.
And my heads of garlic are not that big yet. I had too many close together in the ground so they didn't get as big as they could. But you know, usually your head of garlic is going to be that big. And then this is the stock here that you can put into soup stocks. And then this up here, these curly parts at the top are the garlic scapes. And you see those a lot at farmers market. And then all these leaves, they can be used too. They just add a little bit of a milder garlic flavor. So you might see, I might be putting just a little more than a quarter cup in my tacos because the flavor is milder because they're immature garlic rather than mature. So I'm just going ahead and chopping these up. I'm assuming everybody's getting their garlic all chopped up. And the thing I wanted to mention was that that both garlic and spices, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to just repeat it because it's important that you remember that they can burn easily. So you want to just make sure that you're putting, you're keeping your heat on medium, and you're not going to cook it for very long. And you can see I'm actually going to put almost closer to a third of a cup in mine. And now, if you're really sensitive to garlic and you think this might be way too much, you can put in just 2 tablespoons or 3 tablespoons. And then, you know, you'll know next time, maybe you want a little bit more in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my olive oil in. And we're just going to kind of put that right in the center of the pan. And I can see that it's starting to get that little shimmery look. We don't want it to get real hot, not like when we did the onions. And I'm putting that in there, and let's see. Can everybody hear? It's just a real gentle sizzle. Okay. And I'm going to get all of the garlic down into the oil. And there we go. And now while we just want that to cook like about 3 or 4 minutes. What we're trying to get to is, remember that fragrant state where, you know, you can start smelling it and get to cook just a little. While you're waiting, we can go ahead and mix up the spices that we're going to put in. Because whenever we have a lull in the recipe, remember, we want to just move on ahead to the next step. And our next step is our chili powder. And you've got a couple of options here. You can use the ancho chili powder, and I think you probably all read in the shopping notes, that one's pretty darn mild. I think it's only 1 on the scale of 1 to 10, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's why I went ahead and put 2 tablespoons of that. I used that the first time I made this recipe. But then the second time, I used the chipotle chili, and I really liked it. It's funny, I've had this for a long time, never used it, and finally got busy and did it, and I just loved it. So I put in the whole tablespoon because I like a little bit of spice. Remember, the chipotle is, I think, a 4 to 6 on the scale of 1 to 10. So if you're a little bit nervous, if you're using chipotle, use just a half a tablespoon. We can put more in later, okay? So I'm putting in the whole tablespoon, and then I'm putting in the Mexican oregano. And I just wonder, maybe you could give a thumbs up to Maggie and let her know, were you able to find the Mexican oregano? Some people did? Okay, that's great. And don't worry if you didn't, the Greek oregano works well. But what's kind of interesting is that I learned that Greek oregano and Mexican oregano are actually different plants. And when you, like I just sifted this Mexican oregano into my thing, if you can do that with yours, you will smell Mexican food. I mean, that is so classic Mexican food spices. But okay, stop though and give your little garlics a stir and make sure I am smelling mine really nicely. I think maybe 1 more minute. I'm going to take and measure out the cumin, and then I'm going to put it in. But Maggie, it looks like Maggie, is there somebody who's got a question?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's the beef girl. So I'm pretty much done with sauteing my beef. There's a fair amount of fat that came out, big surprise. Should I take some of that out, put in a little more olive oil, and then keep going, or what? I haven't done
What I
any.
would do, Jean, is I would just use that for your to saute your garlic and your stuff. That'd be a lot easier.
Okay, so I'm going to put in my garlic now.
Right, and just push the beef to the sides of the pan.
All right, so I'm a
And
little bit.
let some of the grease get into the middle so that the garlic can get in there.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, great, Jean. Okay, so my garlic is just about done. So I'm going to go ahead and put my spices in. I'll kind of mix them up here a little bit. And then we've got the salt and the pepper. So I'll go ahead and put some of that in now too. Oh, here's my salt here. And it's kind of funny. You might think, why would you put pepper in? But I found that it worked. It was kind of good to have just a little bit of black pepper in there. Okay, and my garlic is starting to brown just a little, and we don't really want much browning on that. So let's put this in, and we're going to let those spices cook. I'm going to stir it all up, get everything as much as I can into that oil. And oh boy, you can really start smelling some good smells right there. I think Maggie's smelling it too. Okay, so Maggie, well, I want to do one more step and then I'm going to stop and ask more questions. But if anybody's got any questions as we're going along, shoot away, okay? But what I'm doing right now is I'm going to put the tomato paste in. And what you're noticing is that I'm pulling it out of this jar. So let me tell you about that in just a minute, why I'm doing that. And then I'm going to put the broth in. And if your tomato paste is real stiff, you're going to want to use a whisk and get some of, I'm putting in about a half a cup of the broth. This is my bone broth here, so that's why it looks a little different. Whisk that in, and then we're going to quickly go ahead and put the tofu in. But get this mixture really mixed up well. Because once the tofu's in there, you can't get it. Yep, Maggie, that would be great. Let's go ahead. Can you get, okay? I know there's so much steam coming off. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm really mixing that together. And it's made into a little sauce now, which is great because now I can pour in this tofu. And Maggie, maybe we want to do this again. I don't know if you can watch this close. Let me get rid of that. And I'm going to mix this in here. I'll hold it up. But you can see that it's going to coat this tofu. And Jean, you're just a little bit behind us. So just take your time and get the garlic sauteed, then add your spices, and then the tomato paste and broth, and then mix in.
Okay, I'll just follow you along. I'm getting the garlic sauteed, then I'm going to throw in the spices.
Yep.
And then I'll put in the
tomato sauce and broth, and then you'll mix all the burger and everything together. And then you'll be right at the same spot we are.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay. So Maggie, why don't you unmute everybody and let's see is everybody caught up okay? How are we doing? I'll stop here if we need to.
Oh, Mark and I are a little behind, but we're catching up because there's two of us. So.
Do you need any help with anything? Is everything making sense?
If you want to come over.
I think Brenda's going to take care of you just fine.
Vanessa will be fine.
Okay. Does anybody else have any issues or troubles or have any questions? Okay. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is, and be sure to unmute yourself if you have questions, okay? So what we're going to be doing is just putting this on low and letting it just kind of simmer there. And so now we've done all of these steps to try to get this tofu to taste like something. And we just need to now give it a little bit of time to absorb all those flavors. And here's the thing you're going to want to do is find the right balance between having it too moist or too dry. You know, think about when you're going to put this on your tacos, you don't want it so soupy that it's going to make your tacos all, your tortillas like all mushy. But on the other hand, you don't want it really dry either. So what I'm going to do is, it's actually almost easier to stir this with a spoon at this point. I'm making sure that I'm getting it all stirred up here. And that you want to make sure that that tofu is getting completely coated with this sauce so that it can absorb the flavors. So give it, take a few minutes to really stir that up, okay? And then we're going to just turn it on to simmer, like pretty low heat, and let it just sit there and kind of simmer for 10 or 15 minutes while we go on with the rest of the recipe. Okay, so now we've already gotten all of this done. Now we're just going to be doing the flash frying of the peppers and the onions, and then we'll make the toppings, and we're almost done. So you can see that this isn't so very hard. This was probably the most complicated spot right there. And I am going to actually switch my burners here because I need to have this one a little bit closer. And I will turn this one onto low. And then this one, now we're going to do this frying of these peppers. And this is going to be something that you're going to want it on pretty high heat. You might remember that when we did sauteing of the onions, just regular sauteing, we kind of stuck with medium to medium high. And when we do these ones, we're going to actually do it more on probably about a medium high heat. Maybe even a little bit more, because we want to really cook them fast, get them brown really quickly, and actually maybe even get just a little bit, not burned, I hate to say that, but almost kind of like charring like you would on the grill, okay? And you can imagine that that's what they do in Mexican restaurants, so you know what I'm getting at. So let's go ahead and start with the onion. And I think you've seen me do this enough times, and so we'll go ahead and let me just double check what I say to do with the onions. I'm doing them just pretty much like we did with the pickled onions. And by that way, it wouldn't hurt to give your pickled onions a little stir. And also, the other thing you might want to just keep an eye on is keep an eye on your tofu. If it looks like it's getting a little bit too dry, go ahead and just add a little more broth. And then not too much, because we don't get it too liquidy, but just a little bit in there, and then it'll cook down. Okay, so again on the onions, sliced off both ends. Now I've got a flat side. I can chop right down on that. And I've got my 2 halves, so now it's a little easier to get those peels off. And speaking of onions right now, I just saw at the grocery store for the first time that the sweet onions, like the Valencias and the Walla Wallas, I just saw them in the store for the first time. So, if you're going to pickle the onions and you're a little bit nervous about raw onions, try it with those sweeter onions, and that can be a really good option for you. Okay, so now we've got that done, and I'm cutting these onions, an 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch thick. And can I also just say, you might be noticing that how my knives are slicing through this onion pretty nicely. And that's because I just got them sharpened, and I'm pretty excited about that. So can I just remind you, it's one of the things in terms of good equipment in your kitchen, can I remind you that knives and a good cutting board are probably the 2 most important things, along with your sauté pans. So please, please don't skimp on those. Make sure you get good ones. I can help you if you don't have one. If you live anywhere in the Boulder area, I've got a great knife sharpener that I can turn you on to. Those 2 things are just so important to make your cooking something that's easy. I mean, you don't want to have to struggle with these dumb onions every time you cook. So be sure to do that. So now let's see. I was a little bit hesitant to turn my pan up too quick, so I've got to let that heat up just a little bit more before I put the onions in. So looking ahead, the next thing I got to do is slice up the peppers, and let's see. We're going to be doing those a 1/4 inch thick. They're going to be a lot like these, so 1/4 inch thick, and then maybe into 1 to 2 inch lengths. Now, when we do a pepper, well, I'll show you that again because I think my pan is just about hot enough here. So I'm going to go ahead and add another tablespoon of oil, just like we always do. And you'll notice that I don't actually measure this. I mean, feel free to measure it if you want to be really conscientious about the amount of oil that you use. But after a while, you get to know about how much is a tablespoon, and you can just kind of eyeball that, and it saves a little bit of time, makes cooking a little easier. And now what I'm going to do Yep, I think this is just about hot enough. It could be a little bit hotter. But yeah, now it's hitting it. But like I say, we're going to cook these pretty fast and furious and get them pretty brown. Okay. So I'll stop there, and I'm going to show you how I do the pepper, and then I'll come up here a little closer. And then I want to make sure I stop at the end and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, so I went ahead and did that one too fast. Let me stop. Okay, what I do is I cut right to the side of the stem. Then I can get in there with my thumb and pull out the seed pod. And usually I lose very little of the pepper. If I don't, I can just pull it off of there. And then I reach in there and I just pull out the membranes. Not critical, but a lot of people don't like those in their dishes. And then I do that with the other side as well. And then always with the peppers, you got these curly ends. So I slice those off first, on both sides. And then I take and slice those as best I can. They're just a little awkward. Don't worry if you don't get perfect slices out of them. I know that. And then I do it the other way. And there we go. So we've got some pretty nice pieces there. And then these pieces are easy. I just slice those into my 1/4-inch slices like this. And then turn them the other direction and maybe cut them roughly a little bit more, just so they're not too gangly. And I do that with the other side as well. Slice them about a 1/4-inch thick, turn them the other direction, and there we go. And we've got the pepper sliced up just that easily. Okay, so I'm going to stop and slow down. And I'll open that up for questions. Maggie's opening it up now. And I'm seeing that my onions are cooking pretty darn good. I want to let these get a little bit brown before I put the peppers in. So I'm going to wait. And one of the things that I'm doing, you might notice I'm kind of tapping. That's what I'm doing is trying to break those onion slices up so they're not all bunched up in their slices. And now we're going to leave that again and let that be. So let me ask Maggie, is there any questions? And how are we doing? Do we need to stop for a little bit and let people catch up?
How are we doing, team?
Okay. Okay.
Yep. This, oh, sorry. Hey, this is Cindy. My onions are taking a while to cook. I'm using a iron skillet, but it's not got a great, it's not a great big one. It's only like 10 inches. So it's taking my onions.
Okay, just an iron skillet, just 10 inches. Yeah, you know what you might want to do is actually use 2 skillets if you don't have like a big one.
Okay.
You have a second.
Yeah.
Why don't you put half of the onions over into that? Because one of the principles of sauteing, and I'll go ahead and do that while we're just waiting for these to brown, is being able to, here, and Maggie, I'm going to have Maggie show you, but why we like the big pans is so that we can get the onions really spread out.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the point of what we're doing is trying to brown them, and you can't do that if they're all stuffed into one small pan.
Yes, they are. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just put it into 2. That's a great, I hope you have an extra one. And if you don't, Cindy, the other thing you can do is just do them half and half at a time. Which will work fine too. Okay, so did somebody else have a question too? And Cindy, I hope that answered your question.
Hi, it's Jean.
Yeah,
I
Jean.
just want to let you know that we in Beefland have made a delicious sauce. Everything has sort of worked. And now I'm going to do my, what do you call it? It's my veg. It really is good. Just what you said.
Jean, you know what? Thank you for reminding, because everybody.
Onions and peppers, or do you want to stir this?
What? Somebody else have a question?
Here's an onion, should I just chop it off?
Okay, all right. Okay, Jean, thank you for reminding me, because everybody is going to want to taste their filling, whether it's burger or tofu. You're going to want to taste that and make sure that is it spicy enough and is it flavorful enough for you? Because if it isn't, you can add stuff now and it'll just keep cooking in there.
So, okay.
Should we take a second? Well, let's get our peppers in, and then let's take a second and let's everybody test ours, okay?
Well, how long are we supposed to be? I'm just doing my onions now, so.
Yeah, that's fine, Jean. That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we'll slow down. And I got out 3 peppers because mine were kind of on the small side. So I may put in an extra one. And the whole reason, that we want to do some peppers and onions is because we want to get more vegetables into our tortillas and tacos, right? We don't want to just be eating just tofu. And let's see, because you can see now I'm getting some beautiful browning in there. I hope you can you see that, Megan? Okay, so now let's go ahead and add those peppers, all right? All right, and then I'll stop again and ask questions. And Jean, and you just take your time. There's no rush here. And I just wanted to answer one other thing about why I do peppers the way I do. A lot of cooking schools will tell you to just cut that top of the pepper off. And then they just kind of discard this whole part of the pepper. And yet we know how expensive peppers can be. So that's why I like to do this technique so I don't lose any of that pepper and it doesn't have to go to waste. And if I just take a minute to take and chop that top part off and the bottom part, I still end up with this, which is what they always do. But I also get all of this additional pepper that could have gone to waste if you did it the way that most cooking schools tell you to do it. So that's why I do it that way. We don't want to have any food waste, right, Maggie? Maggie knows about me and my food waste. I'm a demon about it. In a good way. Well, good. Okay, so my pan is really cooking things. I may have to actually turn it down just a little bit, but my onions are getting just a tinge of blacken to them. I'm going to see if I can find, maybe, let's see. Does that show? Can you see right here? They're kind of getting almost blackened a little bit. Yes, yes. Okay. And you probably don't want it much more than that, but you do kind of really want that kind of really brown, and we're going to get the peppers in there as well. And then we are really closing in on this dish. And man, I just remind you to take a look at your tofu or beef filling. Make sure it's not getting too dry and maybe burning to the bottom of the pan. We don't want that. So keep an eye on things. And yeah, maybe you want to get a picture of what mine's looking like. And mine is looking, I think, just fine. I added a little bit of broth, and I don't think I want to add any more. In fact, I want it to dry out just a little bit. And then here's my peppers and onions cooking away here on pretty high heat. Okay, so now we've kind of got those things under control, right? We got our pickled onions. So now we are dangerously close to having these tacos done. And look, we're only 10 minutes to 6. Doing pretty good.
Can I?
Yeah. Anybody got any questions?
Can I look at sauce?
Oh, yeah, of course.
How dry?
Oh, thank you so much.
Yours?
Does anybody have any
Oh,
questions?
no, it's just for the mattress that we'll be sleeping on, so no rush.
Yeah. Maggie's unmuted us in case anybody's got any questions. Anybody got any questions for us?
It's Jean again. Can I look at your sauce?
Yep.
Can I see how dry
The
it is?
filling?
Yeah, the filling.
Just a second, let me get a spoon.
Okay.
Mine is about like that. It's got a little bit of moisture in the bottom of the pan still, which is probably good because it's going to be a few more minutes and it's got to cook.
Okay, got
But
it.
that's about all. And I'm just thinking too that you don't want to get, I don't think you want that tofu to get all mushed out. Jean, you don't have to worry about that. But I might have added too much liquid to mine. Okay. Okay. If there's no other questions, then we're on to the toppings. And the first question. Okay, all right. And the first thing is cabbage. And that might have seemed, I wonder if to anybody else, did that seem a little odd to put cabbage on these? Because usually people put lettuce, which is fine too. But I think it's kind of good to get, it's always good to get as diverse an array of vegetables into your diet as you can. And sometimes we don't get that much cabbage in our diet. So that's why I went ahead and specified, why not try some cabbage in these? And actually what I learned is that cabbage is often a much more traditional topping than lettuce. And you know, the nice thing about it is that cabbage lasts in the fridge for a long time. I mean, you can have this in your fridge for 2 months. And so then if you decide to make tacos and you don't have any lettuce, well, you can use your cabbage. And so a big thing about the cabbage, though, is you want to kind of be able to slice it pretty thin. And I've got this old funny knife that I also just got sharpened. It's such a classic, isn't it? But it's actually doing a pretty good job of slicing this cabbage really thinly. And you can see that what I'm doing is I'm just kind of trying to shave it off almost, rather than do big slices at once. And indeed, it does take a little more patience, but I think you'll like it better when you get this nice thin cabbage on top of your tacos instead of big clunky slices, okay? So if you can, go ahead and give yourself a little time. And you'll also notice that what I do is I'm kind of rotating around the cabbage. You see how I'm turning the cabbage and kind of just slicing off a little here, a little there. Okay, so we'll do that. And then that's the biggest part you have to, the biggest preparation of the toppings, I think. After this, it's your cilantro. And I had some cilantro that I already had cut up, so we're going to use that. And this, again, is from my garden, so it looks a little funny. You still got the little flowers in there because it's starting to go to seed, but it's still really good. And then
this is Rosemary. And another thing you can use besides cabbage, or in addition to cabbage, are diced radishes. Ooh. And that gives you a crunch.
Yes.
And that's really good for.
You know what? We've done that, Rosemary, and I loved it. I actually fry my radish, cut into matchsticks and then fry it, because I don't like the raw ones. But if you like the raw ones, that would be great. Mm-hmm. In fact, you know what I think we did is we did kohlrabi on top, which is kind of like cabbage.
Yeah.
But also crunchy like that.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, a nice suggestion. Do you eat it raw on there? You put the radishes on raw? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, good. Because you like that flavor, okay?
We always used to dice it and put it in a little bit of water to take some of that raw taste out of it. And it's really good. It's very crispy. Just let it soak in water for a little and then drain it and use it.
Okay, and Rosemary, you cut off. Why did you put it in the ice water? Because of what?
My mother said it took a lot of that real sharp sting out of it, or that raw taste. Yeah. And it's real sweet and crunchy.
That's interesting, because that's why I fry it first, is to take some. Okay, I'll have to try that then. Thank you. Yeah. Good. Well, okay, so now everybody, you know what I'd love to hear is Maggie will probably unmute. And I'd love to hear, what is everybody using for toppings? Does anybody, Rose just mentioned something that's unique that she's using. I wonder who else has some, who else?
I have all this CSA. I'm picking up more CSA tomorrow. So I had leftover spinach, and I have a lot of lettuce in my garden. So I did not get cabbage. I'm just going to.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. And that's a good way to use things up like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And an avocado and.
Avocado. Oh, good. Okay. Does anybody else have any other toppings that you're doing? I know I got the salsa here. We got our pickled onions. And who else has got some other interesting things?
I have pickled radishes from the farm, and I have chard from my local farm, so I'm going to be using those.
Is that Cindy?
Nope, this is Nancy. I came in a little late. I was working.
Oh, okay, Nancy. Good.
I was working, and I came in a little late. I thought it started at 5:30. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's not a problem at all. I'm just curious, Nancy. Now, are you going to be, oh, by the way, my peppers and onions are really brown now, so I'm turning them off, okay? Nancy, are you going to cook the chard before you put it on?
No, I think I'll just cut it.
Okay, you might taste it. Chard can have kind of a harsh taste when it's raw. So maybe taste it before you put it all over the taco.
Okay.
If you don't like it, if you don't like that flavor, just cook it.
Just cook it for a little bit. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, yeah. But I'd like to hear what you find out. That'd be good. Because some people might like it that way. Okay, so now I'm going to stop and unless anybody else has some interesting toppings. My shoe came untied, so I needed to tie it before I tripped. Does anybody else have any other interesting toppings to share? Because otherwise we'll go on, warm the tortillas, and is everybody ready for that? Okay, so for warming the tortillas, the way I do it, and there's lots of different ways, you know, you can of course fry them in a little bit of oil on a pancake griddle or something. If you don't want to, something that's a little bit faster, is I take and like put a couple in. And then maybe I'm going to go over to the sink. And I just get a few drops of water and sprinkle them on. And then I put another couple. You know, however many you need, okay? I put those in there and then I sprinkle them. And let's see. Okay, and then maybe I'll do 2 more. Okay? But the thing is that like on this one, I got maybe a little too much water. You don't want to do too much because it makes them soggy. But enough to just put a little moisture in there. And then when we put it in the microwave, there we go, they'll soften up really nicely. So what I do is then I just close this up, microwave them, maybe 30 seconds, 45, depending on your thing. The other way you can do it is just wet the whole napkin. Get damp, just damp, wrap them up, and then you can put those in the microwave like that, and that'll give them a little bit of moisture. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then just out of curiosity, I'm going to do it 30 seconds. Okay. And out of curiosity, how do other people warm their tortillas up? Does anybody else have a different technique?
These small ones too.
Anybody? Okay.
Yeah, this is Cindy. I have heated them up. I've heated them up on the grill, and I put parchment paper in between them so they don't stick to each other on the grill. A little bit of moisture and then parchment paper in between.
Well, so Cindy, are you saying that maybe you would stack them up?
Yeah.
With parchment paper in between?
Yeah, and in foil. In foil on the grill.
And then put a little water in there, did you say?
Just a little bit, yeah. On the grill.
That's a great idea, especially like if you were to grill the peppers and onions there anyway, huh?
Yeah.
Mary, I'm sauteing mine because mine are these partially cooked corn tortillas.
And we're not ready to heat them yet.
Oh, Lauren, did you find those at Natural Grocers?
She suggested that.
I got them at Alfalfa's.
I just saw those, and I
They're
thought
really
these were
good.
really interesting.
Yeah, they're really, I think they're locally made.
Yeah.
The Boulder Chip Company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, please let us know how you're doing, because if they're good, I want to share those with everybody, because those were made with really.
Yeah, I've had them before, and they are definitely good, but you have to cook them in a little oil, just a little.
Like what, 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, in fact, I better flip it.
Okay. Well, Lauren, would you just email me that, and I'll send it out to everybody else.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in? Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and assemble them. And before I do, I just wanted to say one thing, is that you can see that we're making this dish with all real whole foods. And a lot of people get confused over what's healthy and what's not. And really, I like to say that healthy eating is a lot easier than we think. All we have to do is make meals with just real food. And you look around, everything we've got is pretty much straight from the earth. A little bit of processing for the tortillas, a little bit for the tomato paste. But I just hope that you can see that this is a really doable thing that we can do. And this is the way that we can build our immunity and be a really healthy people. Because I don't know if you've read this, but there's just another article in the Wall Street about how Americans with other chronic diseases like obesity, diabetes, that sort of thing, they were 3 times more likely to suffer worsened outcomes from the COVID disease. And so that's why I do what I do, is to help people see that this can be fun and not that hard to make these health-giving meals, because all you have to do is just make sure you're using real whole foods. So with that, let's go ahead and I'm going to make up a tortilla here. I think you all probably know this, but I'll go ahead and just assemble one so we can see it. And if anybody else is assembling theirs, ooh, these came out just perfect. If anybody else is assembling theirs, would you show us online, and can we, or maybe you could take a picture and send it to us. That would be great. Okay, but then we can all show off. And so I'm going to start with just a little bit of the tofu topping. I'm going to make mine open-faced rather than trying to roll them up, because you can't get nearly enough stuff in them. So, and then I'm going to put the onions and peppers. And then next is the cabbage. And then it's the toppings of your choices after that. I'm going to go ahead and put on some of the pickled onions. And you know, you can make the pickled onions with yellow onions as well, like especially one of the sweet ones. I specified the red because they're so pretty on top, aren't they? So then, and then we put on a little bit of our cilantro. I need to chop this up better. And some salsa. And you can just see how quickly this turns into just a gorgeous meal. So let me see if I've got, here I can use this. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to just mention is that on the tomato paste, the reason that I was using it out of the jar is that after I use some of the tomato paste, I think a lot of you know this, you might use it out of a tube or you might use the dried kind, but if you use the jarred kind or canned kind, you can just put it in, I measure out 2 tablespoon things, put it on. You can even just use the pan that you use to freeze the tofu, stick it in the freezer and it makes little patties, freeze them, and then you've got them all pre-measured. And you don't have to keep wasting any of these, because mine would always go moldy before I'd get around to using it. So anyway, I think we are set there. So how has anybody else put their tortilla, their taco together? Oops, trying to get some of that avocado on there.
No. How long did she microwave them?
I microwaved them about 30 seconds.
Yep.
I had 6 in there.
Okay.
Oh, and then don't forget the lime is like so good. Make sure you get some lime in there. Sprinkle it on top.
Yeah.
Oh.
Who do we send a picture to?
Oh, could you send it to me?
What's the address?
Oh, you know the same. Oh, Maggie will enter it in right now. MCR, those are my initials, at cookhappylivehealthy.org. And for any of the emails you got announcing the class, you can just hit reply to that and attach the picture. I'd love to see it, but does anybody want to show theirs off now? I'll put us in gallery view so that we can see each other's. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah. Okay. Anybody want to show theirs off?
I'm not putting them together because my dining partner is still working. So I'll send you a picture. Okay.
Please do.
The veggies turned out perfect. Perfect. What a great recipe.
Yes. Excellent. And you know what? I forgot to have us all taste our filling. Did anybody have time to taste the filling? And what do you think of it? Was it hot enough, spicy enough?
Mine was wonderful.
Yeah, mine was good.
Good. Because it's really important to taste your things before you plate them. I did not do that.
Vince tasted ours, and he's a little worried that it's going to be too spicy for me. But I have sour cream, though, so I'm not worried.
I didn't even have the sour cream and cheese, but those are good. Donna, what kind of chili powder did you put in?
I used that ancho chili powder, that you gave us during that other cooking class a long time ago.
Okay.
quite a
You,
while
you
ago.
should be okay with that. Yeah. And you know, on the spices, I wanted to make sure that if you don't have all those chiles, you can use just a chili powder in here. But I just think it's so much more fun to use the different spices myself. But if you don't have it, just use chili powder. Okay, anybody else though? Let's see, Nancy. Oh, you're maybe a little behind though. Nancy. Let's see, Cindy, how did yours come out?
Yeah, everything tastes really good. I haven't plated it yet.
That's fine.
What did you put on top of the tofu mixture? Did you put the onions and peppers on next?
Yes, and then the cabbage,
Okay.
and then whatever else you want. And it wouldn't matter, Cindy, if you here, we'll show it to you. Megan's showing it to you one time. But it doesn't matter too terrible much, but you know.
Okay, thank you.
Other thing I forgot to do is, if you wanted to, you could have put a little bit of salt and pepper on the peppers and onion mixture. Sometimes if you try to salt the taco, it's not going to get in there. It's better if you salt the components, which we did and we did with the pickled onions and stuff. So that might be a better option. Good.
I sent a picture. I'm going to start eating.
Okay. I'm so glad. Thank you all for joining me.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to, if anybody has any other questions, you can stay on.
We're good.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary. I'll send you a picture.
Okay.
Mary, I wasn't here for why did you freeze the tofu? I wasn't here for that.
Oh, yeah. Let me just see if anybody else has any other questions, Nancy. Brenda, that looks beautiful.
It looks tasty.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks again. Thank you, Mary. We're
Bye.
gonna. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.